And I sold it out in a month via an email. I didn't even have to market it on Instagram, which is pretty crazy. And I took that as a sign from the universe that I was onto something. And I did that retreat. This was in the beginning of 23, and it just brought back all of what my heart was desiring.
I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to Online Marketing Made Easy. Ooh, this episode is a good one. I already did the interview. As you know, I like to record the intro after I interview my guest just to get a good vibe on what the conversation is all about. This was a good one, and I think it's going to resonate with so many of you, but also I think it's going to allow you a new perspective and to dream a little bit bigger. So my guest today is a very good friend of mine, Jessica Zweig. She's going to talk about a massive pivot she made as an entrepreneur and how you too can take the right steps to either rebrand your business or, dare I say it, you might have not ever even thought about it, but one day down the road, sell your business, which, if we're being honest, is a very big dream of most entrepreneurs. Now, some of you are listening and you're like, what? I just started this business. I can't even imagine thinking about selling it. Well, I wish someone told me 15 years ago that selling my business was an option, and it opens so many doors around your next chapter in life. I probably would have set up the business a little bit differently or thought about it differently over the last 15 years, whether I was going to sell or not, just knowing it was an option. It wasn't something I ever really was introduced to until recently. But this conversation really is going to bring that to light. So let me tell you about my guest. One, she lives in Nashville. We talk about that right when she comes on the episode because we both moved here not too long ago. But Jess is a multi-seven-figure entrepreneur, and she founded 3 different businesses. She's been featured in Forbes, is a top-ranked podcast host, and a sought-after speaker for companies like Google, Mindvalley, and Nike. Yeah, those are big names. At the beginning of this year, Jess decided to make a huge pivot and sell her business. And what she did next was very surprising to some people. Maybe the ones that knew her really well, not so much of a surprise. But I, at the time, didn't know her really well. We have a more recent friendship over the last year. So when I saw the new direction, I was like, whoa, that's a really big pivot. That takes a lot of courage. I need you to come on my show. I was going to say, come on my talk show. Come on my show. We need to talk about this. Finding the courage to make a pivot, knowing when you're ready. She talks a lot about burnout and how that led her to realizing, wait a second, something needs to change. Before she sold her business, she changed a lot about the business to get it into a place to sell. Fascinating conversation about what she needed to do to change it. And then her new direction and how it absolutely is aligned with who she is today. We also talk about, as business owners, allowing ourselves to change as people. First year of business and 15th year of business, I am not the same person. So why would I expect to always just be doing the same thing since day one? So I loved that part of the conversation too. I got a lot of value from this conversation. I think you will too. So I won't make you wait any longer. Let's bring on my special guest. Well, hey there, Jess. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much for having me.
My favorite Nashville transplant, just like me.
Yeah, no, it was meant to be. You and me in the same city.
When did you move to Nashville?
Well, I've been living in Nashville since 2022. Been coming back and forth for the winters. Like we wintered from Chicago. But believe it or not, I officially moved here 3 months ago.
Okay, so it's been official as of 3 months ago, which is
Yeah.
great. It feels like you've been here as long as I have, but now it's official. Both of us are embarking on new homes, building new homes and exploring all of that, meaning we're staying in Tennessee, which is very exciting.
This is home for the this is I've never loved a place more than Nashville. And I'm not going to lie, you being here and Julie and just the community of other female entrepreneurs and beautiful friendships, it's what makes a home is the people. And so I've loved having you
Truly.
here.
You're right. We have one mutual friend that we adore, which is Julie Solomon. And I think she connected us initially.
She
But
did.
now when we get together, we all try to do the three of us, which is so fun. But community in Nashville is way better than I've ever experienced anywhere else. So I agree with you.
It's literally the best part about it. It's the best thing in life is community.
Truly.
Really. And I was searching for a community like this, and we just fell in love with the nature and the music and the food. And I'm like, well, wait a second, Amy Porterfield is here. So is Julie Solomon. It's just been it's been the best chapter.
It has. And you bring up community, and that's something we're going to talk a little bit about on this episode because you've built a beautiful new community, really. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we won't go there just yet. So I want to talk to you about making a pivot in your business because you're one of my very few friends that have sold a business and stepped into something very different and very new in terms of where you were. And so I want to talk about that journey. So first, kind of set us up. Where were you just a few years ago, like deep into your agency? So can you kind of set the scene for us?
Yeah. So I just sold my company, Simply Be Agency, that I ran for 7 years to the day. Did I tell you that?
No.
I literally opened the doors on January 1st, 2017, sold it on January. It was a new business, January 1st, 2024. So I started my business as a one-woman agency, one-woman consultancy, took the clear stance to help people with their personal brands. At the time, this is when like Gary Vaynerchuk had just kind of come out hard talking about personal branding as a space. No one was really offering it as a service. I had a background in marketing. I love people. I'm like, let me bring those two things together and serve anyone who would hire me, frankly. And my business just exploded. It went from $300,000 in revenue year one, $1 million year two. I tripled. I just kept growing at that rate. And I was really in alignment. Simply Be it's inspired by a tattoo on my wrist, Amy. It was not separate from me. It was my identity. It was my life. It was my passion and my purpose. And in 2021, I launched my first book, Be. And that book blew up my business in the best way. It just doubled that year in both revenue and team. I went from 9 people to about 22 people in less than 11 months. That's very fast growth. And, I feel like that moment, that 2021 to 2022, I started feeling really exhausted. I started feeling overwhelmed, frankly, by the chaos of it all. And when you hire people that fast and you're on 100 hours a week and you're spinning a ton of plates and not making any space for yourself, that can lead you to a very dark place. I'm not going to lie about that. And at the same time, I made some really strategic hires, and I got in place some people that were exceptional leaders, got me a little bit out of the weeds and more on the business than I'd ever been out of it. And I could really wear the seat and in the hat of the CEO. And it was around that time where I was like, wow, this thing is, while it's taken a bit of chaos and like hard won lessons to get here, this is a business asset now. This isn't a lifestyle business anymore. This is a company that is running as an organization would without me. And it gave me some space and time to catch my breath and to really tune into where I was at and if this was something I really wanted to do forever. And the answer was no. I always dreamed of selling my business. What entrepreneur doesn't dream of selling their business? And it was during the year 2023 that I was able to really slow down, take a lot of space, get a lot of clarity. I decided to host a retreat for fun. It sold out with all these beautiful women. I got a book deal for my second book, which is so different than my first book. And I was like, I think I'm ready to change what I'm doing. And then by the grace of the universe, you know how I believe in all that stuff, I got a knock on my door from a buyer of my who ended up buying my company. And so it was a lot of internal self-discovery, soul searching. It also took a lot of energy and effort to get my business to a place that it could be a sustainable asset without me needing to be in it every day. And it opened up this whole new question of what would I do next? And I really explored all of 2023 what that answer was going to be.
And we're going to talk about what you are doing next because it's actually very exciting and so aligned with who you are. But I have some questions because one thing I love that you said that I think is really important. So, some people listening, they might think, I could never sell my business. A lot of my listeners, not all, but a lot of them are just getting started. They're in their first few years of business, lots of questions, probably many still in their 9 to 5 job, but they do dream of having a wonderful, thriving business. And I love that you said most entrepreneurs think about selling their business. I think that's really true. Once the business starts working, once you start moving forward, it's like, wait a second, could I sell this? What would life look like afterwards? So that is so very true. But one thing I have a question for you is, did you think I need to sell the business, so I need to get it into a place that is sellable, meaning I need to bring on these really great leaders, I need to step out of it? Or was that just your way of saying, I need a break from this. I'm craving something different. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to find a way to step back to explore it. How did that work?
Such a great question. So back to the early few years of Simply Be when it was like popping off, I had read this great book called Traction by Gino Wickman.
Love it.
I feel like that's one of the best books to read as an early, like any stage entrepreneur. But
Agree.
I had really used that book as my Bible in the very beginning. And the business started humming and I started making money and growing clients and establishing my culture. And I went to lunch with a mentor and he asked me, so what's your business plan for this business? And I was like, what do you mean? I read the book Traction. Look, I got a business plan. Look how well it's doing. He's like, no, no, no. Where are you taking this? And I was like, well, I haven't really thought about that. He said, you have essentially 4 options. He said, you can run this forever as a lifestyle business. You can one day shut it down and just go do something else. You can hire someone else to run it for you. You maintain ownership, but you're no longer the CEO, or you can sell it. And I want to just say to those listening, there's no bad answer. There's no wrong route. Every route is valid based on what's true to you. And I was really, if I'm going to be real honest, my first business, this was my 3rd business. So my second, Simply Be, was number 2. Number 1 was a failed business.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I started an online magazine in 2008 that I ran to 2014. That's when I found you and I started learning Amy Porterfield online world classes and courses. But it was a digital magazine that I say was critically successful, but financially a failure. And you learn a lot in your failures. I don't believe you win or lose. You win or you learn. And that was sort of the dawn of the tech scene in Chicago, and there was a lot of money being raised and people were selling their businesses. And I had always had this eye on the prize of maybe one day building a company to sell it. So when my mentor said that to me, I was like, I don't want to ever shut this down. My ego would be too bruised. I don't want to own it and be financially, fiscally responsible for it and have somebody else run it. I'm a little too controlling for that.
Yeah.
And I don't see myself running an agency till I'm 60 years old. So I knew I was going to sell it. And so from there, I started making strategic hires and strategic decisions and putting in different processes and systems and softwares and product strategy to scale so that I could eventually build an asset to sell it. And I eventually did that about 3 or 4 years. I eventually sold the company about 3 or 4 years after that one conversation.
Oh, that's great. So you gave yourself some time to ease into this new reality and to step back. I remember going to dinner with you and you telling me, like, I used to be in every like major deal we had with clients. And now and you would always like be at the beginning at least. And then you got to a place that you didn't even know some of your clients.
By the end, I didn't know most of them.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I want to say this to those listening, because this is something that I'm sure many think about, right? I created In my book, actually, I didn't know I was doing this. This was the foundation of our agency. I created rinse and repeatable methodology. I trademarked it. It essentially became my IP. So not only did I hire people who could help run the business from a sales and operational standpoint, but my creative team was able to take sort of the DNA of my vision of how we branded people and follow a script, essentially. And that became rinse and repeatable so that I could really, I mean, it also came down to hiring the right people, but stepping away because I could trust that my team not only had the operations right, but the craft of what we were doing right. And that was huge.
Keep the integrity of what you do best. That's pretty impressive. That's really cool. Okay, so I'd love to hear, I didn't know that about you, that you definitely for the last 3 or 4 years thought, no, I want to sell. I'm going to get it to a place. I don't know how it's going to turn out because there's no guarantee. You could have gotten yourself to a place that you were ready to sell and there weren't any buyers that you would have entertained. So it is a risk you take, but I will say this. Let's say you got your business to a place where it was the last few months before you sold. I think you probably could have went on a few more years like that because you did take yourself out of it so much, right? If you
I
had
did.
to.
If I had to. I got to give a huge shout out to a woman named Shauna, who is my integrator and my COO, essentially. I had to hire 3 Shaunas before I got Shauna right.
Good to
You
know.
know
Good
what
to
I'm
know.
saying?
Yes.
I'm just being real. And she said to me in our first meeting, she's like, give me 90 days and I will get you out of the weeds because I was in the weeds. She did it in 45.
Oh, geez, Shauna, where are you? You multiply yourself. Let us all hire you.
She's a unicorn for sure. She's God's gift to truly my last few years. And so, yeah, I had a lot of space to play and write a book and take a sabbatical and, all the things that I had wanted. But there was still, I still owned the asset. I was still responsible for all of my employees and, P&L and L and all the things.
That's heavy. That's heavy. So I'm glad you brought that up because while you still were responsible for all of this before you sold, you mentioned 2 things. One, you wrote a book while you were still in that business, and you've written another book now that we're going to talk about, but also you did that retreat. So was that your way of starting to explore maybe where you wanted to go?
Yes.
Okay, talk to me about that because there's some people that their question is, do want to make a change, but I don't even know what else I would want to do. I just don't want to be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, great question. So I had hosted retreats years ago, and I loved them. They really filled my soul. They weren't my main moneymaker. I was running an agency, but being in community with women in a beautiful location with good food and great activities, like I love planning events. I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm an enthusiast. Like I love the parties.
She loves costumes. She loves it all.
I really do. Like give me like the goodie bags and the great decor and the yummy food and the great DJ. I like to plan it all. That's me. And so if I'm going to be again raw and honest, that last year, especially before I met Shauna, I was really burnt out and I didn't have a lot of joy. I was making money. My business was really successful on paper. We were winning the awards, but Jessica, she just was burnt and was looking for a little bit more joy. And so I got a download, me and my cosmic downloads. And I was like, I heard like a message, like host another retreat, do it for fun, do it for you. And I got on Instagram. I put up a story. I created a little waitlist link. I was like, I'm thinking about hosting a retreat here in Nashville. Would any of my community want to come? I got almost 1,000 people signed up for my waitlist. I was like, well, I guess I'm hosting a retreat. And I decided to price it at a price point I felt would be really abundant for me because I knew how much work it was going to go. I wanted to bring in a very specific, woman, whatever. And I sold it out in a month via an email. I didn't even have to market it on Instagram, which is pretty crazy. And I took that as a sign from the universe that I was onto something. And I did that retreat. This was in the beginning of 23. And it just brought back all of what my heart was desiring. And I was like, I want to do more of this. This was fun. This was profitable. This was impactful. And it's adjacent. My retreats are business, branding, and also spirituality and women empowerment. And it really brought together all of the things that I loved in one place. And I got clear on, okay, if I sell this thing and if I pivot, I think I know what my pivot is going to look like.
Whoa. Okay, so that's a big deal. So those that are listening that feel burnt out right now, okay, well actually I'm going to take you back. I want to come back to that. I want to come back. Don't let me forget. I want to come back to the moment that you thought, okay, when I sell my business, this is the direction I want to go. I did this retreat. This nourished my soul. This is the direction I want to go. We're going to put a pin in that and come back. But before that, people are listening that they are very burnt out. That doesn't necessarily mean they need to sell their business or abandon their business and start something new, but it might. So, can you talk to those people who are burnt out, overwhelmed, just kind of over it, but not sure what to do? They still need to make money. What advice do you have? What steps should they take to start looking at their business and their life? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I'm going to start with is we have to make as much as we can space for rest and stillness and our own collecting our own energy, because from a place of mental, physical, emotional, creative burnout, we're not going to be able to make any rational, sound decision. And I know that might sound like a luxury if you're like drowning in it, but just making the commitment to close your computer at 5 versus 8, making sure that you take a couple hours for yourself on the weekend to clear your head. I was so tired in my body that I didn't have the ability for quite some time to get the clarity because I was just so raw. And I really want to highlight that. I think we really override the importance of taking care of our bodies as step one. I think really taking an honest look at the dead weight and the fat in your business. If I'm going to be honest, Amy, I did some downsizing. I reorged my company. I had to let go of people that I loved that weren't performing their roles. Your job as the leader is to the fiduciary duty of the whole of your business, not the individuals. And that might sound harsh, but that was contributing to my burnout. My business wasn't functioning as well as it should because I didn't have the right people in the right seats. And then really taking stock of where you're making the most profit across all of your programs and products. We had to refine our product strategy. We were every women and men. If you needed a little bit of this and a little bit of that when it came to branding and marketing, we could do it all. And we had to get really discretional on what we did and what we didn't, and be really honest with ourselves of what we did best, what was our core area of genius, not excellence. I'm sure you're familiar with Gay Hendricks, that book. He talks about you can do something really excellent and be like amazing at it, but it doesn't mean that it fills your soul. And a lot of our excellence can burn us out. But when we're in our genius zone, we're in flow, right? It comes more naturally. It fuels us versus depletes us. So we had to really take a look at what were our genius zones as a business and cut even what we thought we were excellent at, because it was weighing down the whole business, not just me. And the last thing I'll say is getting really, really clear on your audience. We were the very beginning of Simply Be Days. I was like, everybody needs a personal brand. If you're a doctor, if you're a coach, if you're a spiritual teacher, if you're a real estate agent. When we were trying to be everything to everyone, it was causing more chaos actually in our business. So we took about a quarter of a year. This was at the end of like 2021, I think, and did an ideal customer profile analysis and got razor sharp on who our client was and who they weren't. And we had all of our marketing speak to that consumer, that client. And we, after 6-9 months of running that marketing through the pipes, we started to attract that ideal buyer. And that created, I should say, more levity in the business because we were serving people we really could help and found kind of a blue ocean with that. And so all of those pieces, tactically as much as, physically, I would say to start to look at in your business to ease the burnout.
Okay, I love that. And so if someone were to look at that and think, okay, I can clean up this part of my business. I love trimming the fat and getting clear on who you serve and also getting the right people in the right seats. And just by doing that alone, I love that you kind of gave some timelines. This all did not happen overnight.
No.
Like you even said like 6 to 9 months or something before you even started to see your ideal client really that work pay off. It takes time.
It does.
And so giving yourself some time to re-engineer the business, tweak it, change the things you want to change, get the rest in, have some non-negotiables where you're not working late into the night and every weekend. I love that you said that so that you can have a little clarity, think straight, focus on what really matters to you to make the right decision.
Yes.
And if you do all that, you still might come to the point that you would like to sell your business, or selling a business, that is kind of rare. Would you say that most people don't sell their business?
No, and there's a statistic out there that 1% of people who sell their businesses are women.
Oh, whoa. I did not know that.
I know you have a lot of men and women who listen to your show.
We have lots of women.
Right. And when I heard that stat, I was like, well, I'm proud, but that's too low.
Yeah, it's too low, but you should be very proud. And I hope some women just heard that and they said, oh, I'm up for the challenge. Like, bring it on. I want to say something about selling a business. If you think about selling your business, that doesn't mean that you don't love what you created.
Absolutely.
Right? In many ways, it opens the door to new opportunities. And you don't have to sell your business for millions and millions of dollars for this to be a great decision for you. You could sell it for a few $100,000, but the money's great, but also the new opportunities are amazing as well. And so how did you not, where I would struggle with selling my business is my ego. And you kind of mentioned ego earlier, where you had those 4 options. One is just to close it down. You're like, my ego is too big for that. I get that too. But even letting go of something, this is dramatic, that you birthed, like, my business is my baby. How did you separate yourself? And I want to know, is it because you were so clear on your next step that you were able to let this go?
That's such a great question. And I want to kind of go back and with that question, answer the other question about what do you do when you're in this place of burnout and the steps that you can take. And this is a little bit of my woo coming out, so forgive me, but
Okay, what you don't know about Jess is she's very woo. And I said, be a little gentle with the woo so we don't lose some of my marketing minded only people. But you got to be yourself.
I love talking about marketing and business. This is my world too. I feel like you have to give yourself permission to evolve, for past versions of you to die. There was, yes, clarity that I had, maybe, not as much as I did when I launched my new platform, but I was getting clear on the next thing. But I was really clear because I do a lot of work on myself. I do a lot of personal development work, a lot of spiritual work, and a lot of meditation, right? And inner reflection. And I just knew that this was no longer in alignment with who I had become. The woman that opened those doors in 2017, I was no longer that woman in 2023. And so I want to say to your audience, if they're tired, if they're burnt out, there's no rules. Like, you can change, you can switch directions, you can close it down, you can try something new. Nobody really truly cares as much as you do. And your business, yes, it is your baby. I birthed that thing from the depths of my soul. But I felt like it had grown up and it was walking on 2 legs, and I had nothing left to prove. I had nothing left to prove, Amy. That really came to me in 23. I was like, I did it. I did it way more than I even thought I'd ever do it. And I'm ready to feel more in alignment with the woman that I am right now. And I think that's life as much as it is business.
Very much. So because you knew that, and I love that, I have nothing more to prove. And there's some people listening, they're just getting started. They're like, oh, hell no, I have a lot to prove. Like, bring it on.
Perfect. Totally. It's a great place to be.
But I love that they also hear a woman saying, I did all that. I built this business, multi-million-dollar business. Also, you haven't mentioned lots of awards. You got a lot of awards for your agency, which is really cool. But you got to a place of, I know that this isn't in alignment anymore with who I am, and I'm ready to go another direction. So I want to go there now. So let the woo come out, my sweet friend, because I want you to tell everyone what direction you went in. It's very different.
Yeah, it is. I kind of hard launched. It was like, mic drop, February 2024. So I'll make a long story shortish. I got Shauna in place. 2023 was this beautiful year of space. 2022 was really the peak of my burnout, right? Really tough year. Had to reorg my company, fired my executive who was my mentor. We had a very rocky quarter over quarter revenue sprint. I was killing myself to hold up this new monthly quarterly payroll of like, or monthly payroll of $250,000 plus a month. And I went to Egypt at the end of 2022. And I've traveled the world. I've been to 35 countries, and I've never been to a place like that. And it was a spiritual pilgrimage. It was not a vacation. It was 15 days of early morning wake up calls. You're going through temple after temple after temple, and you're having these really big experiences. And I write about this extensively in my new book, The Light Work. So you can go read it and get the details because I want you to go read it. But that identity, right? That woman that I had been sort of playing as the CEO of Simply Be. This is going to sound a little dramatic, but she died in Egypt. She did not come home with me on the plane. And I got really clear that I had something more to say. I had a different path to follow. I had more work to do in the world other than run an agency. And I got so clear on what that was. And I got a book deal for the second book right on the heels of that trip. Shauna was in place. I started taking tons of space to host my retreats and write the book. And it was so divinely timed that Hawk Media, the company that bought me, knocked on my door about 6 months after that trip. And Egypt is not your typical country that you travel to have. It's like it'll mess up your life going there in like the best way. And I just decided that I was going to kind of come out of the spiritual closet and share my beliefs in this book and how it pertains to women, high performing leaders, what I learned through my burnout story, how I've journeyed through a lot of dark experiences, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a woman on this planet, which I think so many of us have faced common darkness. And I wrote a book about light and how to really see our roles here as equally as important as what we do professionally, but how we're really here to use our businesses. And I know this is true to be for you, Amy. Look at what you've created. You've created such positive impact in the world, right? And I know the beautiful community of your students are creating businesses because, yes, we want to make money. We want to work for ourselves and we don't have to answer to the 9-to-5 man, but we want to ideally build businesses that make a positive ripple effect. And so that's my new global message for women entrepreneurs to bring together their beautiful brands, their badass business chops, and also to connect to a deeper purpose within that is more in alignment with their true selves. And that's that. I had the time to get really clear on what that was. I was also going through due diligence, selling my company. So I had to keep a lot of this behind the veil. So by the time I announced we sold our business in January, I was like, let's go. I'm ready.
And now with your new business, you have retreats, right? You have this book coming out. You have a membership that you're working on. So you're building a full business around this new calling that you feel very clear that this is the direction that you want to go.
Yes. I mean, I started the business 4 or 5 months ago and I've already had to hire 2 full-time people.
I was going to ask you about hiring. Did you take anyone from the old business into the new?
Yes, I did. So I had 2 co-founders and one of them came with me. She's my chief creative officer, Alexa. I took my assistant who's, how.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I can't live without. Mine is Christine. We call her Queenstein, and she can never quit me. I hope till I'm 80. So I get it.
Her name is Stephanie and she's a little bit older. She's in her 60s actually. And I call her Mary Poppins. She's riding off into the sunset with me till she retires and then I'll cry and have to replace her. But to find an assistant that good is invaluable. And then, so I have the 2 of them and then I have a contractor and then I just brought on a fractional COO and a project manager. Like this has all happened in the last few months because my coaching has exploded. So I'm working with a lot of female entrepreneurs in one-to-one VIP containers. That's been phenomenal. And then in just a few months, I'm not sure when this podcast comes out, but with the book launch, I'm opening up the doors to my first online program. And it's going to be a business school for feminine leadership. And I'm very, very excited about that. So, membership, retreats, one-to-one, group cohorts, masterminds. I'm launching a big one next year. I have a whole product roadmap now for the next 2 years. I'm very excited about it.
Okay, one thing I see that is really exciting is that when you build a business and then you decide to sell. So I'm hoping that we've got people dreaming right now, like, wait a second, I can sell my business. Total side note, but I've told the story before, but I want to share with you what you might be doing in this moment for people. I was on a podcast. I did a podcast years and years ago and talking about my first $1 million year. So I just had mentioned I hit $1 million. Here's how I did it. And it was just a solo podcast. Brooke Castillo, who owns the Life Coach School, heard that. And at the time, I think she said she shared this story. She was making like 300,000, and she heard it and she's like, you can make $1 million with a business like this? Like, what? You could do that? Well, that woman's gone on to make $50 million in a year. She's like literally way beyond what I do. So, but I always love that story, and I've told it probably too many times, not to brag, to say like, I helped Brooke Castillo. There's none of that. It's that she heard something and it unlocked a whole other level. So I feel like what you're doing right now is some people are listening that never, ever thought of selling their business. Their business might still be a side hustle, but they heard it. And one day, Jess, they're going to say, maybe 5 years down the road, I heard this podcast with this woman who sold her business and started something else. And I didn't know I could sell this business. And I just sold my business for $1 million, something like that. That's what I love about these conversations.
Me too. And I just want to say, I don't know if you know this about me. I worked in corporate America for 2 years.
That's right.
So after my magazine, which I ran for also 7 years and that failed, I had credit card debt. It was bad. I had no choice but to go get a job. I had to pay off my debt. My husband was going through a huge dissolution of his own career. I took this very nice fat 6-figure salary with benefits and a bonus and a corporate credit card. And I was golden handcuffed for 2 years. And I say that Simply Be, my agency, sat on a shelf and looked at me for 2 years. It didn't go away, but it was still a dream. I couldn't work for the man for one more day. I just couldn't. And I say that I leaped in the net, caught me. And my husband and I fought for months leading up to me quitting because he was in a lot of his own scarcity, rightfully so. And I said to Brian, my husband, I go, just give me 1 month and I will get enough clients to afford half of our rent, because we split, and our groceries. And it came out to $2,000 a month. I got one client that paid me $2,000 a month. Within 3 months, I had 6 clients that was making me $10,000 a month. Then about 6 months later, I had more clients. I was doing about $40,000 a month. 7 years later, it was a multi-million-dollar business, and I sold it. Like, I remember that feeling of those humble beginnings. And there's something really beautiful about that time, honestly. You'll never have it again. And if you keep going and keep trusting, and you listen to podcasts like Amy Porterfield's and read her book, and do it for real, put your heart and soul into it. And so I really hope, because I was that girl 7 years ago being like, cross my fingers, this is going to work. And it did. It really all fell into alignment. But even though it did, it fell out of alignment towards the end. And it wasn't a bad thing. That's life. We grow, we change. We're allowed to change direction. We're allowed to change our minds and continue to evolve with our careers, because we evolve. Yeah, I'm so happy you said that. And that's so major about Brooke Castillo. Like, you should pat yourself on the back for that one, Amy.
Such a cool story. I love when she tells it. It's like my favorite thing. But you just said something that was really powerful. And I want to talk about your book in a minute. But you said we're allowed to change. And it made me think, like, when you're in your 20s and you're dating someone and it doesn't work out. And then when you're in your 30s or 40s and you look back at dating that person, you're like, I would never date someone like that now, because you have changed. That is very normal to us. So why do we expect not to change in our business? I feel that I'm 15 years into this business and I'm brewing some new ideas. I feel that I'm ready for something new and to up level. Like it happens every few years. So we have to embrace that and allow ourselves to grow in business just as we allow ourselves to grow in our personal lives.
Well, speaking of 7 years, I don't know if you know this. I heard this once a long time ago around like science. I'm not a scientist, but I do retain certain scientific data. We are literally a new person every 7 years. Our cells, our hair follicles, our our organs regenerate. Like we are a different person every 7 years according to science. And I love what you just said too about you creating new things that you're, brewing with at your business. We wanna stay inspired, We wanna stay continually excited about our business, and that's another point of burnout when we're just doing the same thing all the time, and we get bored. Like, boredom also can contribute to burnout too. So, you might not necessarily wanna sell your business after a few years, but you might wanna innovate and create new things and offer new programs and pivot the business without necessarily having to shut it down or sell it. Just because if you, as the founder, are continually inspired and you have vision, that's what's going to power your business. That's what's going to get your team excited. That's what it's going to get your clients and community excited if you're excited. And so that's really important that you said that.
Oh, I love that for sure. Okay, so tell us about this book because it is very different than your first book, B. Would you agree?
It is. It isn't it? It is.
Okay,
But it's
but
an
it's
extension in a way.
okay. So it's called The Light Work. What is it about?
So the light work, it's the subline is reclaim your feminine power, live your cosmic truth, and illuminate the world. And notice I didn't say reclaim your power. I said reclaim your feminine power. So this is a book by a woman for women. However, I believe that we need men a part of this conversation and a part of at the table, and we can all, I believe, benefit from what's in here. Live your cosmic truth, not just your truth, but your cosmic truth. And I believe when you do those two things, you can't help but illuminate the world. So it's a spiritual empowerment book for high performing women today who have been somewhat hooked on the toxic hustle that we have to prove our beauty, our worth, our love, our capacity to grow and receive wealth and friendship and accolades, all the things that I have personally been through that have led me to some pretty dark places. And I'm very honest in this book. I'm very naked in this book because I want women who read it to feel like they're not alone because they're not. And it is a real roadmap back home to the truth of why you're here, which isn't just to, work a job, make some money, even have a family, which is a beautiful thing to do, and a white picket fence and take a couple of vacations a year and call it a life. Like you're here for a big reason. And that's really what the light work is here to activate in you. And it's a real, I think, truth telling book about my perspectives of what's really happening on this planet and why we're in so much fear and separation. And I couldn't be more excited about it. The last thing I'll say is in my first book, B, which was a branding book, a personal empowerment book, but through the lens of personal branding and authenticity, I talk about the light inside you throughout the whole book. All my materials, my hologram, my pinnacle, my supernova, Orion's roadmap, all of my methodology is named after the stars. It's always been there.
That's interesting. That I think that's great for other people to hear that your next chapter, if you so choose to have one, could really already be brewing and be a part of you right now. It doesn't have to be something so out of the blue because IT is like, this is way different, Jess, but you're right. It's who you've always been, but it's just in a very more transparent way. And like you said, a lot of truth. So you have something special for my listeners. Tell them about it.
I'm so excited. I'm giving away 25 signed copies of the light work. Thank you. I love you. I've been a part of your community. I feel your community. I'm so great. I'm honored to be able to gift this. So all you have to do is go to jessicazweig.com, and I'm sure you'll leave it in the show notes, /easy, jessicazweig.com /easy. And the first 25 submissions, get a free book sent directly from me, signed to you. And if you aren't one of the first 25, I'm still going to send you something free. I created this beautiful Inner Flame, Reignite Your Inner Flame program that includes an ebook, a meditation, and a video, really walking you through how to expand your light and heal from whatever burnout you might be in to really tap back into your joy. So much of what the book is about, actually. So you get something free no matter what. So just go to jessicazweig.com/easy.
There you go. And I will put it in the show notes. So amyporterfield.com/698. That's where you're going to go. I'll put it in the show notes. You could click on that and hopefully be one of the first 25 people. But if not, you still get something really valuable. So Jess, I love you so much. I'm so happy for your new journey in this world, and it's needed. And I adore you, and I value our friendship so very much.
I cherish our friendship. Side note, I just did the intro to your podcast on mine yesterday night. I recorded the intro. And I was like, don't gush about her too much, because like I just love you. You are just such a bright, bright light, and I cherish our friendship. You have been such a sister to me, and I'm just so deeply grateful.
Thank you, my friend. I feel the exact same way. Very, very excited for your book to get out into this world. If you're listening now, you can pre-order it, or if you're listening later, you can buy it anywhere books are sold. But go to that URL so you can get something extra good as well. Thank you, my sweet friend, and let's get this book out into the world.
Thanks, babe. Let's go.
So there you have it. I hope you found value in this episode. If nothing else, I hope you look at your business and think, what do I need to do to make sure I minimize the burnout? However, if you're in a place that you are looking for a pivot, you want to do something different, give yourself a lot of grace that you've likely changed over the years, and maybe it's time to reevaluate who you are, what you're doing, what your business looks like, and then have the courage to really dive in and think, where do I want this pivot to take place? What do I want it to look like? Give yourself permission to dream big. Okay, and to enter to potentially be one of the first 25 to get a free signed copy of Jess's new book, all you need to do is go to amyporterfield.com/698. And in the show notes, you will see a link that will take you directly to Jess's page to enter. So you're going to put in all your information and make sure to enter the word easy in the coupon code field. So enter the word easy, and you could potentially win a free signed copy. And if you don't win, she still has a freebie for you. Okay, my friend, I cannot wait for you to dive into her new book. And I will see you again next Thursday, same time, same place. Bye for now.